The goal for me this evening is to share with you how we can use exploring pathways electives as a way of extending our learning and transforming our Toastmasters journey. Now, what does that mean? Well, before we get started, I want to share a quote that I found, and I was very touched by this quote. I was looking for quotes that had anything to do with paths and pathway choices and finding a right or a left turn on a path. And this one kind of hit home when I was doing this particular, putting together this presentation. It's not choosing the right path that matters. It's knowing what ignites your passion. Once you've figured out what brings you joy, you don't have to worry about finding the right path, or in our case, selecting the right pathways. Any path, and I repeat, any path will take you there. And I think that's so important to think about when we're talking about pathways and pathways electives, because I think a lot of people are still not quite ready to embrace pathways. And I want to say this is the time to do it. This is the opportunity to have fun and play and enjoy your pathway. So I want to talk a little bit about what do you think brings people, and feel free to jump in and put a message on chat. What do you think brings people to to Toastmasters initially? And I feel like at our club that we've heard a variety of things over the years: overcoming anxiety or fear around just public speaking, whatever that might mean to anyone. Uncomfortable in social settings, whether it's business networking, a holiday party, or a gathering of some sort where they have to meet or interface with new people. Needing to prepare for a special event, that often is what brings somebody in the door initially. They have some event in the future that they're worried about and want to plan for and prepare for. And it could be something as simple as a holiday party or some sort of activity that they'll have to mingle, and that makes them uncomfortable. Perhaps a manager suggested that you join. And I say hint, hint, wink, wink, because I'm sure many managers, if we are working, have to give us performance reviews, and they want us to do well and they want us to shine. And they may make a suggestion that you could really improve your meeting management skills. You could really improve how you communicate. You're always running late or over time. Why don't you find some way to get some training on time management? Another option might be lack of experience equals just lack of confidence. And then I think that really what I hear what people are saying is any new opportunity may mean an opportunity to build new skills. So I'm going to ask you to think about a moment. Think for a minute about what brought you to Toastmasters initially. So as we're thinking about our different pathways, we're thinking about electives, we're thinking about icebreakers, whatever the case may be, I want you to just stop for a minute and think about when you walked in the door to Pathways, what was your motivation? What was bringing you here? And again, feel free to chat in the chat feature if you want to write maybe 3 or 4 words. It doesn't have to be a long piece, but it's just getting you to think about what brought me in. And I know for me, I was in a transition work-wise. So I just want to be able to practice my speaking skills, presentation skills, because I was looking for a new job. And ironically, in this particular situation, I joined the club, gave my icebreaker. And during the course of the icebreaker, I didn't know there was a recruiter in the room. And the recruiter asked me to interview for a position at that company. So bam, my icebreaker literally changed my life. So what brought you in and what motivated you to join Toastmasters? Then I'm going to ask you to reflect a little bit about what keeps you engaged in Toastmasters. What brings you back day to day? And whether it's been 3 months, 3 years, reflect for a moment on what gets you to keep coming back. So I want you to remove, and I think of it as kind of peeling back the routine commitments of a Toastmasters experience. Don't think about it, oh, well, I'm an officer, so I have to keep coming back. Oh, I want to compete in the speech contest. I want to keep coming back. I want you to peel it all the way back to just what keeps you personally. What is your intention when you dial into the Zoom meeting each week? What do you want out of your Toastmasters journey today? And what do you need out of your journey? You may want something and need something. They could be 2 different things. They could be the same. I want you to think about pathways electives as opportunities. They could be challenges, but they are mainly, I guess I want to share with you the idea of looking at them as opportunities. This is where you can transform your Toastmasters journey by consciously and intentionally selecting pathways electives that do a few different things, creating a more meaningful experience for you. Sometimes we get kind of caught up in that, well, I'm on this path, what's my next speech? and we don't really think about how to make it meaningful. We just think about, I have to get a speech done. So I'm going to ask you to take a step back and think about how can you create a more meaningful experience through your pathway experience. Pathways also provides, and the electives provide, a structure and a framework that can match whatever your goals happen to be for you this week, this month, this year. And right now we're in a period of time where we are all in upheaval, and we don't really know from week to week, month to month, what our present and or future might be. But one of the things that keeps coming up in the news, on the radio, in the paper, digital paper, is that psychologists are saying that if you can add structure to your day, it'll help you keep moving forward through these uncertain times. So pathways and electives are a way of doing that, because they provide a framework that we can work off of moving forward with our goals. And then the fun part is you can focus it on your personal interests. So whether that's on yourself and your self-development, I want to be able to mingle easily, even if it's on a Zoom call, a Zoom meeting, I want to mingle more easily at a holiday party. It can be focused on your community. I want to help something locally. Maybe you're politically involved and you're a neighborhood leader representing your particular party. You might not be knocking on doors in the traditional sense, but there may be creative or new ways that you need to knock on a door to make sure somebody got their ballot, that they have their information packet, that they know where they're supposed to drop off their ballot. Maybe it's a professional interest that you have. You, again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, you want to grow or develop professionally. And so you want to use your pathways experience to gain some business skills or communication skills or professional skills, whatever you want to label it. Those things that we do, we practice every single week here at Toastmasters, whether it's the hosting and facilitating the meeting, managing and timing the meeting, speaking in front of our membership, etc. So with pathways comes multiple opportunities, multiple pathways, and still 2 tracks. I think when I look at pathways, I look at it from a communications perspective, and I look at it from a leadership perspective. And you can find both of those in every single pathway. And I feel like you can find both of those in every single elective. So let's talk pathways electives and let the fun begin. One of the things that we, just as we launch off here, I want you to think about, every pathway starts with the same first level and second level. So kind of the fun, and yet it could be, some people often will say, well, why do I have to do my icebreaker again? You don't have to do the same icebreaker, but you get to know that every single fellow Toastmaster is going to be doing an icebreaker on any path that they begin. And they're going to move through level 1 and level 2 the exact same way that you are. And then the fun begins, because you get to start customizing your program with the actual electives. So I'd like to start by focusing on level 3 electives. And in each pathway, you have an opportunity here to look at this list of electives and figure out which 2 you would like to present to your membership in any way. And I want to point out a couple of things. I kind of played around with the list here, and I'd heard a few people say that they didn't feel there was a tremendous amount of leadership opportunity. And so I'm going to focus a little bit on that as we go through the rest of the slides. But I think leaders, whether you're a club leader, a community leader, a leader in your business, focusing on the positive, particularly right now, is highly critical. And so being able to put together a speech that does just that is a huge opportunity for you to practice that skill set. Same thing with inspiring your audience, whether your audience happens to be, again, members of your Toastmasters club, your local church, your work environment, whatever the case may be. Making connections through networking is a valuable skill, leadership skill, connecting with your audience and connecting with storytelling. So much of, I think of like sales and marketing these days, revolves around storytelling. And there's using your body language to make your point or to emphasize your point is highly effective. And what are we if we are not active listening? So those are all really powerful skills that you can use in leadership roles or in your communication track. You also have the fun of delivering any kind of social speech. Speech is using descriptive language, preparing for an interview, understanding the value of vocal variety, knowing and having a sense of humor, using presentation software, or creating effective visuals. So in these, again, I would just ask you to hop on the chat feature and tell me if you have a favorite one of these that you've either done or are looking forward to doing soon, as an opportunity to share ideas with your fellow audience Zoom members there. If you have any questions, again, Leanna has asked that you hold them until the end so we can keep moving forward, and we want to leave as much time as possible. But I just want you to take a moment again to think about, in terms of level 3 electives, if you were to choose 2 right now, or if you have 2 favorite ones, go ahead and share that with us. I'm going to go ahead and move on to level 4, electives. Choose one. So this is a point now where you get the opportunity. You can present each and every single one of these, but you only have to select one of these to complete your pathways requirement on level 4 in terms of the electives. So again, I kind of played with this list to pull aside the ones I felt were perhaps more leadership oriented, and yet there's a tremendous opportunity for growth in any of these communication wise. So manage online meetings. You know, I think of facilitation skills is a tremendous opportunity for growth, as our Q&A sessions. And I show of hands, how many have ever been in a situation where you've had somebody in the back of the audience, or somebody either snoring, listening, you know, playing with their phone, making some kind of irritated comment, and serves as a distraction. Managing a difficult audience is a great way of practicing dealing with a difficult audience. Public relations strategies is a great tool to develop, managing projects successfully, and then jumping off onto building a social media presence, writing a compelling blog, or creating a podcast. These are all opportunities for growth. You get to decide what that might look like. For just a second, I'd like to take a moment to talk about, as you think about these things, think about it from the perspective of what you will get out of the experience. For example, building a social media presence or creating a podcast. Now, some people might say, I already know Instagram. I already know Facebook. I've got LinkedIn figured out. But is there some way that you might be able to use this experience to try something different or something new? Maybe you've been focused on your own personal, but what about doing something for, Leanna mentioned earlier, her HOA. Maybe there would be an interesting way of building a social media presence for the HOA where they could share those Halloween photographs. Creating a podcast could help your club get some exposure and potentially have new guests visiting and possibly becoming new members. The podcast could be about anything. It could be just, I know that for a fact there is a district that someone creates a podcast for every aspect of a Toastmasters, whether it be club level, district level, or Toastmasters International. And so it's just called Toastmasters 101 podcast. And they focus, one session might be 10 minutes on DCP, 10 minutes on pathways. The next week, it might be how you put together a club success plan. What does a social media presence actually mean for your club? So there's many different ways that you can look at this. I encourage you to think about a little bit outside the box in terms of taking on something that might be of value, and how you might be able to write a compelling blog or do one of the other things that's listed here, again, to get your own practice, but to be of service or to help in some other aspect of your life. Level 5, electives, choose one. I find these to be kind of intriguing because they're not necessarily small. They're more reflective. They're more thinking, taking our skill set to a higher level, which I think is a terrific challenge for any pathway. So lessons learned, moderating a panel discussion, ethical leadership, so important to think about in the days and times that we're living in. There's been, again, a lot of upheaval. So what does ethical leadership look like? And how do you incorporate that not only into your club level, but even into other aspects of your life? The High Performance Leadership Project, leading in your volunteer organization. Again, that could be anything and anywhere. It could be on Zoom, it could be in person, and then preparing to speak professionally. Again, I'm going to invite anybody who wants to share if you've done any level 5 electives that you've gotten particular value out of. Feel free to jump on chat and just share which one you did, and maybe 1 or 2 word description of what you got out of it. There is an opportunity, besides giving speeches. What I've focused on so far has been a lot about different kinds of speeches to give, or some projects that you might tackle. But there's also project-based learning. And when I think of project-based learning, I think of actually doing something that requires me to, instead of just showing up and doing a presentation, this is going to take something that may take me a few weeks or even a few months or probably maybe even a whole year to do. And there's three that come to mind when I look at pathways: the Distinguished Toastmaster or DTM project, which is new. And I just recently found out about it when James mentioned it in another presentation. Going back to level 5, there's the High Performance Leadership Project. I've done about 4 or 5 of those over the years, and they've all turned out differently. And then one that we've kind of skipped past because we didn't talk about level 1 and level 2 too much, but after you've completed level 2 projects, you have an opportunity to participate in the Toastmasters mentoring program. And so I'm going to take a moment here to go into a few more details about that. The DTM special project. A show of hands. Anybody that's working on this in the process? I've just started thinking about mine for the first time recently. The objective is to demonstrate your skills as both a leader and, and a public speaker. And just got a couple key items to think about when you're looking at the DTM special project or thinking about it and what it is and what it means. You need to select, lead, and complete some sort of project with a team. It involves giving 2 speeches, much like the HPL. You give one before you start your project, one after you complete your project, and kind of lessons learned. It's available to you only after you've completed one path and then level 1 to 3 in a second path. And the only way to get access to it, which is a little bit different for most of the other Toastmasters things that we might be familiar with, is you submit a request to Toastmasters International through their education program and let them know that you've completed those things and you'd like them to release the project to you. And then it will show up in your base camp with all the instructions, and then you can tackle that when you're ready. High Performance Leadership Project. Similar to the DTM project, the objective here is to give a leader a chance to put into practice different kinds of leadership skills and the skills necessary to lead. The fun thing though, identify a project that can be anything. It can be work related, it can be community related, so something school, church, service or volunteer, political, or something else. Or it could be Toastmasters related. It could be club level, it could be area level, division, or district. If there's some way that you can be of service, there's no reason that you can't consider that as a potential project. You need to select a guidance committee that will help you work through the project challenges in terms of creating a realistic timeline, coming up with a mission statement, a value statement, figuring out how to overcome challenges you might face with leading a team, and then helping you decide what success will look like, because that can be ever changing. Again, particularly in this time of COVID, when a lot of things that seemed realistic 6 months ago may not be realistic now, and may not even be realistic again in 6 months from now. But the goal here is to recruit your team, oversee the team in the project development. And again, you give 2 speeches, one at the beginning to talk about what you're hoping to accomplish, and then at the end, what you did accomplish. Pathways mentoring. So again, this is kind of an opportunity for you to think about from the idea of how can you lead and how can you be develop your own leadership skills while helping your club. In the Pathways mentoring program, you build and reinforce the skills needed to create a positive mentoring experience for your fellow Toastmasters. Most of my mentor roles have been within, I would say most have been within my club, but not all. I've also mentored people outside of my particular club, maybe like in my area, for example. It's released after you've completed level 2. It's optional. You do not have to do this to complete your DTM path. But I say it's very worthwhile, and I would highly recommend it. And there's 3 elements. Preparing to mentor is one project. Mentoring somebody through one project is the next one. And then advanced mentoring, where you work with someone for 6 months. So you actually help someone probably work through a few speeches, maybe take up some club leadership roles, work on a special project with them, something of that sort. Plus you have to complete one path. And I would just say, if you have mentored, go ahead and either raise your hand and say, I've mentored somebody within Toastmasters using this particular Pathways mentoring program, or go on chat and share with us if you've mentored anybody before. Okay, time is flying. So I will stay here that it says it bears repeating. Really, it does. And when I say that, I mean it in a both a fun sense and a challenging sense because all of these things that I've talked about, these are your topics. You get to decide what topics you're going to speak about. You get to set your pace. You get to decide when you give your icebreaker and as you kick off and start working a path. And when I say here, your topics, your pace, your redo, I mean that specifically from the perspective of, Ugh, I have to give another icebreaker. It doesn't, you should, I personally feel like you should never, ever have that feeling. And that's just me because I feel like, yay, I get to give another icebreaker speech. It gives me another opportunity to try something different. It gives me an opportunity to challenge myself to be fresh about something again. It gives me the opportunity to talk about something maybe I've never even talked about before. And it also allows me the opportunity to allow my fellow club members to get to know me a little bit more. Maybe it's a story, something I'm sharing about my past, my hopes and dreams for the future, or just how I'm getting through the time that we're getting through here, these crazy days. So when I say your redo, it just really bears repeating that you get to make the electives whatever you want them to be. So I really want to put, I guess, a call to action, a challenge. Take these opportunities, make them intentional, be reflective, think about what you want out of your Toastmaster experience, because truly this is all about you. And once you are starting to meet your leadership and communication goals, you can then help your fellow Toastmasters, whether that be at the club level area or so on, meet theirs. I'd like to finish with one more quote. And I thought this was, I don't know, I particularly enjoyed this. I can't tell you where the person that actually shared it, but found it on Pinterest. Sometimes the smallest step in the right direction ends up being the biggest step of your life. Tiptoe if you must, but take the step. So I want to really encourage you as you think about tiptoeing and taking that step, whether it feels like a small step, it can be a big journey. And to make this journey as rich and meaningful and powerful experience for yourself as you can. If I can be of any help, please let me know. I'm happy to be a resource to you. And I will end there and open the floor for Q&A, and let's have some fun.